Well, I've been doing this Vegas investigation for a while now, and I started to get. I was working on some stuff in the background. I put out videos and I put some stuff out there, and but some of the really good stuff I haven't been talking much about. Partly because I don't want people to know what. I don't want the wrong people. Basically, I'm looking into um, some major screw ups by the FBI and the ATF leading up to the Vegas shooting. And so I didn't really want to broadcast yet what I was working on. But one of the so there's two big things that I had really discovered, and I did talk about in previous videos. One was that on September 19th, Stephen Paddock flew from Las Vegas. He took an American Airlines flight that I tracked. He flew from Vegas to Phoenix, Arizona. I got his rental car records. I got the rental car receipt that showed me everything, including the exact time that he picked it up and the time that he dropped it off and the number of miles that he drove. So I started looking, and he flew in on the 19th and then was doing something within 90 miles of Phoenix for about 3 hours, and then he immediately drove back to Las Vegas. And at that point, he was not checked into the Mandalay Bay Hotel. He was checked into the Ogden Hotel. So based on the information that I had, I believed that, and I said this back in October, I published a video predicting that, or saying that I believe that Stephen Paddock had flown in, gotten some ammunition, some guns, possibly explosives, and taken it back to Las Vegas. And that has been validated just here this last week. Turns out I was right. Some of the unsealed documents that a judge ordered the LVMPD to release said exactly that. It says that on September 19th, Stephen Paddock went and visited Doug Haig, who is works for these different. Right now, he works for Honeywell, but he's lifelong employee of different military contractor companies. But he also runs a side business as a manufacturing and selling ammunition. He does not. You don't normally have to have a license in Arizona to sell stuff or to own certain ammunition, including tracer ammo. But you do have to have a license to manufacture certain kinds of ammunition, including this incendiary stuff that he was selling to Stephen Paddock. So these documents that were released showed that Paddock did go in. He purchased some stuff, went to the guy's house. He flew into Mesa, rented a car, drove over there to Mesa to the guy's house. Anyway, now that guy, Doug Haig, has been arrested and charged with a couple things. One, conspiracy, but also with illegal weapon sales, ammunition sales. So that told me that a lot of the stuff that I had previously had a good feeling about, that I was probably on the right trail. So I went back and picked up that same trail. And this goes along with a lot of other stuff that I had previously learned. I got hold of Stephen Paddock's vehicle records, including all of the VIN numbers for all the cars and trucks that he has owned basically since 1997. And I started tracking the ownership records on these VIN numbers. And I had found that while he was still living in Reno, one of his vehicles, it was a 2007 Nissan Xterra, that car was, the title had a second name added to it. And the guy's name was Adam Katchke. And Katchke lived 7 hours away in the town of Caliente, Nevada. And I thought, well, that's strange, because why would he co-own a vehicle with a guy who lives across the state?
That's weird.
And so they shared this ownership of this vehicle for a long time. And then finally Paddock just sold it over to him, put it in his name. And then Paddock took a second vehicle and sold it to someone else in the town next to Caliente in this little place called Panaca. Well, at first things didn't click, but when I went back and looked at it, what I realized was that this guy Adam Katchke had gone to prison. He owned a pharmacy in Caliente, and it was the only pharmacy providing medicine to the local hospital, the prescriptions. Well, this hospital had this huge scandal with drugs, prescription drugs being peddled out. People that worked there were involved in basically a prescription drug running scheme. And one of those guys that was involved in this went nuts and went to Panaca and filled a car full of explosives and blew it up. And it was such a huge explosion that it completely obliterated a house. That house just happened to be the next door house of Adam Katchke's brother. So there's this connection going on. Katchke ended up going to prison for defrauding the Medicaid out of millions of dollars. He was doing illegal ketamine drug sales out of this pharmacy. And Stephen Paddock co-owned a vehicle with this guy. Well, then I made the connection that what I did was I found where that guy, Adam Katchke, who he transferred the title to, and it was to his pharmacy manager, who was a woman who actually, she was a pharmacy tech, but she didn't have the qualifications to be an actual pharmacy manager. Anyway, he transferred that car to her, and that's when I realized that other car that Stephen Paddock had transferred to the person in Panaca, it was her. So I've got Stephen Paddock now connected to these ketamine, an illegal ketamine drug operation. Both the pharmacy owner and the pharmacy manager ended up being sent to prison for it. So I really start looking at this. I had somebody who works at the rental car section there at the Phoenix airport, and they fed me some screenshots of Paddock's rental car records, and I started tracking it, and I saw over the years how he was flying into Phoenix, renting a car, and doing the same thing over and over again. And so what I realized is that Paddock had some kind of operation going on. Well, long story short, Mark, is that Stephen Paddock was involved in basically something similar to the ATF's Fast and Furious operation, where what they were doing was they were moving guns. Well, guns were being sold, being purchased illegally by a straw buyer. This guy named Acosta was buying this. He was connected to Mexican drug cartels. He was taking these guns, with the full knowledge of the ATF and the full knowledge of the DEA and the full knowledge of the FBI. And he was taking these and taking them across the border into Mexico, where they were being sold to Mexican drug cartels, this Sinaloa Mexican drug cartel. Well, eventually some of those guns ended up being used by the drug lords, cartel members. They killed some border patrol agents. It was a big debacle. Well, the big scandal of it was that at the time, these different agencies, the ATF did not know that this Acosta guy, who was a true criminal, they did not know that he was secretly working for the FBI as a straw purchaser. Nor did they know that two of the cartel members that Acosta was transferring the guns to, they were also informants for the FBI. So what ended up happening, and this is why the whole operation got shut down by the U.S. Congress, it's because it turned out that you had one U.S. law enforcement agency working against another law enforcement agency, and they were so screwed up with it that it just they lost hundreds and hundreds of guns that they never could track down. It was a big mess. But I got tracking through this Operation Fast and Furious the routes that this guy was taking, that Acosta was taking, and Stephen Paddock's rental car records match up very close. It looks very much like Stephen Paddock was working as a courier for either the ketamine, because there's a massive amount of prescription drugs, mostly synthetic drugs, being manufactured in Mexico that are brought in through the border into border towns like Lukeville, Arizona, and then being sold and distributed, but also the guns. So the fact that we now have actual court documents, warrants, and information confirming that Stephen Paddock is going into Phoenix and getting some of this stuff and taking it back to Vegas, and this guy was an informant. At this point, I'm sure that this guy was working somehow, in some way. Don't have it nailed down. He was doing something, and the FBI is scrambling to cover up everything about this. And that's why you've got media agencies suing the Vegas PD and suing to get access to any information, because they're not putting anything out. They're not. By this point, if this guy was a lone gunman and it's open and shut, he's just a weirdo that snapped, and that's it. At this point, 4 months after the event, they would have released stuff in any other case. But this, they're resisting. They're not putting anything out. So media outlets have sued. They've been winning, and so they're having to put more and more documents out. And as it comes out, it keeps showing there's something here. So I got concerned when I realized this, and I started talking about this. I put out a video saying, I suspect that the FBI, if what I'm saying is true, they're going to target me and they're going to try and shut me up.
Yeah.
The very next day, I got this bizarre phone call from a German national who talked to me, trying to get me to personally transport. She wanted me to get on a plane and bring $42,000 to Utah, to meet her in Utah. And she promised me $1 million in return.
Yeah, right.
That what was going on was that she had money tied up, that she had a huge estate, big accounts in Europe, and that she needed to get the money here to the States, but Homeland Security was holding it until she paid some taxes on it. So if I could get her the $42,000, that would free up her millions of dollars, and she'd give me $1 million to do it. And so I knew the whole time it was some kind of scam.
Sure.
But listening to her, it wasn't just, she was not putting a lot of effort into trying to get me to give her the money.
Right.
She was talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
But the bigger thing was she was trying to get me to give her advice on how she could basically screw the Department of Homeland Security, how she could commit fraud. And she's a con artist, so a con artist, what they're after is financial reward. But what she was trying to get me to do was to cooperate, to give my verbal consent or advice or counsel on how she can do this. And this woman had done a huge amount of background research on me. I've never spoken. I had no idea who she was. But she had gotten hold of my private cell phone number, which is unlisted.
Wow.
She knew all about me. She knew about my family. She had done some kind of big background research on me. And I asked her about it. She told me that her team in Europe had collected it for her, which, I didn't believe necessarily either. But I got off that call thinking, she was trying to set me up. This call wasn't about trying to get my money. It was trying to get me to cooperate with what she was doing, trying to get me to give any word of approval. because that's a pretty big deal. That's a big violation of federal law, to defraud the U.S. government.
Hmm.
So I decided best thing for me to do is to contact. I got researching her, and I found that this woman has been operating for years doing the same thing. She's not a U.S. citizen, but she was caught doing this to people in 2010, 2011, 2014, 2016, 2017. She's been arrested numerous times, and she has bilked people out of hundreds of thousands of dollars. I reviewed all these court documents. She's threatened people's lives. It's a big deal, and she's made tons and tons of money off this scheme, but she never ends up in jail. So
Never
I
even goes to jail.
Well, they'll pick her up. There's mug shots.
Okay.
I've got two mug shots of her where they pick her up and they book her,
But she
but they let her go,
nothing sticks.
which really made me think this woman has got some kind of protection, and she's not even an American citizen. They ought to deport her. But
You know,
so I go ahead.
well, I'm just, I'm reeling here all this information. The news cycle, it moves so quickly. And, you're talking about Stephen Paddock, and basically that's the shooter in Las Vegas, right?
Right.
And, he was kind of would you qualify him or categorize him as the lone nut kind of gunman that they always try to say these people are?
Well, that's what they want it to look like. That's the story.
Right.
Um, I'll tell you, I don't. I did video analysis. I did a video with an analysis of some major discrepancies. I took the coroner's report that was a section of it was published in a preliminary report that the Vegas PD put out, and in this coroner's report, it states a number of things. It says that the corpse that they got from the room was 6 feet 1 inch tall, brown eyes, and there were some other things. So what I did was I got hold of some records. First of all, I show pictures of the crime scene, and it does. And you zoom in, and the corpse does have one eye open, and it's brown. It is a brown eye. But I got records of Stephen Paddock from Alaska, where he went to Alaska a couple years in a row to go fishing up there, and he got a hunting fishing license, and you have to fill it out, including your kind of like a driver's license. They have you put in your eye color, your hair color, your height, just a description.
Sure.
Well, 2 years in a row, his licenses show that say that he has blue eyes, and they say that he is 6'4".
Really?
So when you look at pictures of Stephen Paddock, and there's several of them out there now, every single photo, Stephen Paddock very clearly has blue eyes in every one. His brother Eric has blue eyes. His brother Bruce has blue eyes. It's a blue-eyed family. And yet the corpse that was in that room, you can see in the photo, it's brown eyes, and the coroner confirmed brown eyes. Not only that, you've got the corpse is 6'1", while Stephen Paddock was 6'4", recorded on multiple documents from years ago. There are moles on the neck of the corpse under the Adam's apple. There's 2 or 3 moles there that do not appear in any other pictures of Stephen Paddock on the internet that we can see. And the other thing that's very significant, you can look at the picture of this crime scene photo of the body. The earlobes are very clearly detached from his neck. People have a range of earlobes are kind of in forensic science, criminal forensic and science. Earlobes are a big thing that you can look at. Everybody's earlobes are kind of like fingerprints. It's unique to each individual. Well, you look at every single picture of Stephen Paddock that's out there, and he very clearly has attached earlobes. They attach right to his neck. There's no space there at all between his ear and where it connects to his upper neck. But the corpse in the crime scene photos, both ears very clearly have detached
So
earlobes.
you were saying that Stephen Paddock was visiting a military contractor named Doug Haig?
Yeah, yeah. Well, he works for a military contractor company. Doug Haig was what the media found uh, when they were suing the Las Vegas police, trying to get the police to open up the files, documents. What the police attorney told the court was, we can't do this. We can't release these files yet because there's another person, another suspect that we're investigating. And if
Mm-hmm.
we release these files, it'll jeopardize our investigation.
Mm.
So um, the judge went and talked to the attorneys in chambers privately because she wanted to know, what is this about? Because we don't want to. The public does have there is real public interest here. Files do need to be released, but we don't want to jeopardize an investigation. So what she ultimately ordered was the release of a whole bunch of search warrant applications that the police had filed, but she ordered that the names be redacted. Well, the clerk that redacted them screwed up and missed the name one time. And so they inadvertently gave to the media outlets the all these papers, 81 pages of information, but the name was in it, and it was this man named Douglas Haig, and he has since come out. He did a press conference and everything because once his name was out there, it was he had to. So what his position is that yes, he did sell a lot of ammunition to Stephen Paddock, but he had no idea at all that Stephen Paddock was some crazy guy that he was going to go do shooting or anything like that. And he says he's innocent of any wrongdoing. He's just a guy who works 9 to 5 and has a side business selling ammunition.
Hmm.
All above board legit. But the day of his press conference, right after the press conference, uh, the FBI came and picked him up.
Oh boy.
So I think they want to they want to shut this guy down, get him gagged, and so he doesn't talk because they don't want people figuring out these connections. They don't want people figuring out that Stephen Paddock was part of something, that he was doing work with for one of these agencies. It was either the FBI, the ATF, or the DEA that he would have been doing this work for. And
I don't know if you feel this way. You probably don't. Looks like you're you're up to your neck in this stuff, but sometimes I feel like I don't even want to know all the horrible stuff that is going on. I'm seriously, my mind is reeling from the FISA memo, which I want to talk about a little bit tonight. And then we got to talk about Saudi Arabia and what's going on there, and oh, the Stephen Paddock stuff. I mean,
well,
this is a mess. It's a cesspool. It's just whoa. Go ahead.
I'll say one last thing about this about this Stephen Paddock stuff. So after this German had called me and all this weird phone call and everything, I immediately thought this is probably the FBI trying to set me up because they want to be able to get in here and get my files and whatever because they know that I know stuff. So I put out a video saying I think the FBI is behind this. And you know what happened?
Ah,
The FBI called me and said that they wanted to come to my home and have me turn over this. What I did was I recorded the phone call between me and this German.
oh,
It was Utah is a one-party consent state. They're wiretap laws. So is North Carolina, where I live. So it's perfectly legal as long as one or the other party knows that it's being recorded. And since I knew it was being recorded, it's legal. So I didn't do anything illegal in recording it.
Oh,
But they said that they wanted to come get uh, my recording, and that they were going to send agents out to my house, and that was supposed to take place today.
oh,
Well,
goodness.
well, I had spoken previously after this German had called me. I knew she was, at the very least, it was some kind of terrible Ponzi scheme, and she's a crook.
Yeah.
So I called the Utah Department of Commerce, because they're the ones who all along have tried to go after her in court. So I made a report, and they said, "Oh yeah, we know all about her. We've actually got a couple different investigations going right now." And I said, "What's the deal? Why doesn't anything ever stick?" And he wouldn't tell me why, but there was something there. And he said, "Well, someone from the Department of Commerce would call me back in a couple of days." But it was just a couple hours after that that the FBI contacted me, saying they wanted it. And I said, "Wait a second, what's the what's the story here? This is being handled by this, Utah state government. What's the FBI's interest in this?" And they basically said, "Oh yeah, well we've got interest in it too," which confirms what I was worried about, that uh, that they really are in on this in some way. So today I did contact the FBI back after speaking with my attorney, saying that no, we're not. I'm not gonna hand it over to them, at least not at this point.
Wow.
Um,
Do you want to be involved at this level? I mean, this is getting very
yeah,
critical
well,
here.
it makes you step back and ask yourself, how deep do I want to be in this?
Sure.
Um, well,
Well,
the
let me ask you this:
yeah.
how will it, like, let's say Stephen Paddock was involved with something really bad with the government. I mean, is it going to benefit you to know that, or benefit you to turn that over? But what I'm saying is, there's a plethora of just absolute horrible corruption everywhere. I mean, this is just one part of it, right? I mean, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts?
No, you trust me, Mark. I asked myself that that there is a line, and I know where my line is. There is a line that I won't cross, because I'm 44 years old. I've got got a wife who I love to death. I've got kids. My youngest kid is um, quite young, and
Yeah.
I don't want to go. I don't want to get stuck in a cage
Sure,
by
sure.
the government, and be
Well,
that's really not my preference. So there is a point, but at the same time, um, I have done absolutely nothing wrong.
well,
All
of
I'm doing as a
course.
journalist is trying to get the information out to the public, and I've talked to so many people who have been impacted by the Las Vegas shooting. If the United States government had some role, whether intentional or not, they have a right to know. I don't know if you know this, there were 83 children who had one or more parent get killed
Uh,
in that Vegas shooting.
that's
83 kids
horrible. That's horrible.
who they are probably going to bed every night, wetting their pillows with their tears, wondering what in the world happened. And so many people, when you add in all the people who are friends of the people that have been shot, or associated with them at work or some other way, this is a mass tragedy that has affected so many people across the country. I mean, I get every single day, I'm bombarded with emails and text messages and phone calls from people who say, "Please don't stop, keep going. We need to know what happened." People need this. They need to know. So I do have a passion for continuing and pushing and trying to get the truth out, but there's also my own family that I have to be concerned about. So I'm constantly weighing these two things: my personal safety with trying to help get the truth out. And it's really a scary thing. I'm telling you, Mark, I grew up so in love with America, and I still am. But this government of ours, is so bloated and
Oh,
so unaccountable and so monolithic, it has become the big brother of George Orwell's 1984. And I've always known that. I've always heard it. I'm into this kind of stuff, and but now that I'm wrapped up in the middle of it and seeing the lengths they go to shut people up just for trying to find out what the truth is, if there really is government involvement in something, even if they never meant for anything bad to happen, maybe they're just really out there trying to get drug dealers and cartels or whatever, and Stephen Paddock was working for them as a courier or something. Even if they only had nothing but good intentions, something went bad, and the public deserves to know if the government had some connection to Stephen Paddock. But but after Fast and Furious, that dealt them such a black eye. I mean, the Attorney General Eric Holder got in really hot water. The U.S. Congress almost went after him pretty hard, and they're the ones. It took an act of Congress to shut down Fast and Furious and told them don't do that anymore. So if they're still doing this, and after Fast and Furious, if they have a debacle like Las Vegas, if that can be tied to them, the American public is going to be so outraged. They're going to go after these agencies. They're going to lose, the agencies will lose total confidence. And so I believe that's why they're circling the wagons. They're trying as hard as they can to cover this thing up and keep the media and citizens like me and you from finding out what happened.
it's I've just kind of stayed away from this whole Stephen Paddock thing. I have a feeling he probably didn't even do the shooting. It's just, I mean, I don't know. I could be completely wrong on that, but he almost feels like he's the public face that they want everyone to see, but that the story's really much bigger. And I don't know. I could be completely all wet on all that, but
No, I agree with you. I have serious doubts. I started out when I started this investigation back in October. It was my belief that Stephen Paddock probably was the guy that pulled the trigger. That I believe that there may have been more shooters involved, but
yeah.
that he was probably one of them.
Hmm.
But this information, and I had someone helping me with the investigation who contacted, I won't say what state, but contacted the chief coroner's offices of a few different major cities and asked them about some of these anomalies, like in the
eye
crime
color.
scene photos, like the detached earlobes.
Hmm.
And he asked them some things, and every single question from these coroner, or every single answer, came back basically saying that there's just no way that post-mortem your ears are going to curl up and detach from your head, or that you're going to have blue eyes change to brown.
Hmm.
So this is incredible intrigue. Plus, these crime scene photos, these are not official photos. The first ones that came out, someone that was part of that original strike team that went in, it was a SWAT officer named Levi Hancock, and there were four other, kind of a random assortment of law enforcement that showed up. They were the first strike team to go in, and one of them, and I believe I know which one did it, saw something that upset them enough that they took pictures on their own cell phone and they leaked it to the press. Those original crime scene photos were not supposed to have been given to the public,
Hmm.
but thank goodness they were leaked, because otherwise we would have absolutely no reason whatsoever to doubt the official story, at least not based on the crime scene. But that crime scene is not right. There's so many things wrong with it.